I've been driving trucks for over 15 years, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the road has its own way of surprising you. You never know what's around the next bend. Some nights are smooth with miles flying by in silence, and others leave you with stories that will haunt you for a lifetime. What I'm about to share is one of those nights, and even now, I still struggle to make sense of what happened. It was a typical haul from Kansas down to Texas, a route I'd done plenty of times. The cargo was nothing special, just a load of farm equipment for a delivery to a small town south of Dallas. The weather was decent, though the night was unusually dark for late summer. No stars, no moon, just pitch black sky and the long stretch of highway ahead of me. I had been driving for about 6 hours straight and figured it was time for a short break. I pulled into a rest area, grabbed a quick bite, and stretched my legs. I remember thinking how quiet everything felt that night. There weren't many cars or trucks on the road, and the silence felt almost too thick, like the whole world had gone to sleep and forgotten to tell me. After finishing my sandwich, I jumped back in the cab and got back on the highway. That's when things started to go wrong. I hadn't been driving more than 20 minutes when I noticed something was off. My headlights flickered. At first, I thought it was a bump in the road or maybe the power surging from the engine, but then the dashboard lights dimmed too. A sinking feeling settled in my gut. The last thing I needed was a breakdown in the middle of nowhere, especially on such a quiet night. A few minutes later, it happened. The engine sputtered and then completely died. The truck coasted to a stop on the shoulder, the headlights flickering out as I rolled to a halt. I sat there for a moment, staring at the dead dashboard, hoping against hope that it was just a temporary glitch. But when I tried turning the key again, nothing happened. Just silence. I cursed under my breath, grabbed my flashlight, and got out to check the engine. The night was still eerily quiet, with only the faint sound of crickets in the distance. I popped the hood and aimed the beam of the flashlight at the engine. Everything looked fine at first glance, but I'm no mechanic. I knew enough to drive these rigs and handle small issues, but this felt beyond me. After fiddling with a few things under the hood and trying the ignition again with no luck, I decided to give it one last go. I bent down to check the battery connections, hoping maybe it was something simple like a loose wire or a corroded connection. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable rumble of another truck approaching. I stood up and looked down the highway, expecting to see headlights. Sure enough, another rig was coming up behind me, moving slowly as if the driver had noticed my truck pulled off to the side. I waved my flashlight, signaling that I needed help, and the truck pulled over a few yards ahead of mine. I remember feeling relieved, thinking that maybe I wouldn't be stranded out there all night. The other trucker hopped out of his cab, and I could tell right away he was an old-timer. You could always spot them, the ones who had been driving long enough that they'd seen it all. He wore a faded trucker cap, a well-worn flannel shirt, and jeans that had seen better days. His face was weathered, but there was a friendly smile as he approached. "Need some help?" he asked, his voice rough like gravel. "Yeah, truck just died on me," I replied. "Tried checking the battery, but I'm no expert." He nodded and walked over to my truck, shining his flashlight under the hood. "Let me take a look." I watched as he poked around the engine, muttering to himself. After a few minutes, he pulled back and said, "Looks like your battery cable's corroded. That's probably what's causing the problem." I blinked. "Seriously? That's it?" "Yep, happens more often than you'd think," he said with a chuckle. "Got some tools? I'll help you clean it up, and you should be good to go." I hurried back to the cab, grabbed my toolbox, and brought it over. The man was already working on disconnecting the battery, his hands moving with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. I handed him the wrench, and within minutes, he had the cable cleaned and reconnected. "Try it now," he said, stepping back from the engine. I climbed back into the cab, turned the key, and the engine roared to life. Relief flooded through me, and I grinned. "Damn, that did it! Thanks, man. I really appreciate it." "No problem," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Glad I could help." I bent down to put my tools back in the box, still shaking my head at how simple the fix had been. When I stood up to thank the guy again, he was gone. At first, I thought he must have walked back to his truck while I wasn't looking, but when I glanced up the road, his rig wasn't there either. The highway was empty, just me and the darkness. I felt a chill run down my spine. I walked to the back of my truck, scanning the road, but there was no sign of the man or his truck. It was as if he had never been there. My heart started racing, and I quickly grabbed my tools and jumped back into the cab, locking the doors behind me. I sat there for a minute, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. How could he have disappeared so quickly? I hadn't heard his engine start, and there was no way he could have driven off without me noticing. The road was straight for miles in both directions. I would have seen his taillights. I checked the time. Only 5 minutes had passed since the engine started. 5 minutes, and the guy was gone. I wasn't about to sit there and wait for answers. I put the truck in gear and got back on the road, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than usual. For the rest of the drive, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every time I passed another trucker on the road, I found myself glancing in the mirror, half expecting to see the old-timer's rig behind me. But there was nothing. I made it to my delivery the next morning, dropped off the cargo, and spent the rest of the day trying to forget about the night before. But that feeling, like I had just experienced something beyond explanation, stayed with me. A few days later, I stopped at a truck stop along the same route and struck up a conversation with another driver. He was an older guy too, and we got to talking about strange things we'd seen on the road. "You ever heard of the ghost trucker?" he asked, leaning back in his chair. "The what?" I replied, raising an eyebrow. He nodded, his eyes narrowing. "Yeah, they say there's a trucker out there who helps guys like us when they break down. Shows up out of nowhere, fixes the problem, and then just disappears. Some say he's been dead for years. Others say he's just a legend." My blood ran cold. I hadn't mentioned what happened to me, but hearing him describe the exact thing I had experienced sent a chill down my spine. I left the truck stop not long after that, my mind racing. Had I really been helped by some ghostly figure, or was it just a strange coincidence? I've thought about that night a lot over the years, and I still don't have any answers. All I know is that I haven't broken down on the highway since, and I hope I never do. Because if I do, I'm not sure who or what might show up to help.